All right, thank you for joining, everyone. My name is Alex Bralo. I'm on the marketing team here at Pareteum. Today, we will be presenting a webinar focused on the Internet of Things, which you know as IoT. The presentation, which is titled The Internet of Anything, Powering Your IoT Solutions with Pareteum, will cover our various IoT solutions, along with some trends in the IoT space. These include the rise of connected cars and the broader OEM IoT market, impact of 5G and Wi-Fi 6, and the impact of eSIMs and soft SIMs. Our presenter today is Chris Hills. He is Pareteum's Vice President of Global Connectivity and Procurement. Chris will be joined by Mehul Vora, our Vice President of Sales Engineering. Now, before I hand it off to Chris and Mehul, I would like to take care of some quick housekeeping. The presentation should take approximately 30 minutes with time set aside at the end for questions. To avoid any technical issues, we will not be answering questions during the presentation. So if you would like to ask Chris and Mehul a question, please enter it in the question box and they will address it at the end of the session. If your question goes unanswered, we will save it, forward it to one of our team members, and they will follow up directly with an answer. So with that, I would like to thank you again and hand it over to Chris.
Thank you, Alex. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, for wherever you are joining today. At Pareteum, our mission is to connect every person and everything, and IoT forms a key part of our strategy, especially in light of how COVID has impacted how individuals live their lives and how companies manage their businesses, from supply chain to remote working. I'll be giving a brief overview of the market, diving into some use cases, looking at the technologies enabling this expansion and how Pareteum fits into this market. Finally, ending on the Q&A session, as Alex mentioned. I'm joined by Mehul, our VP of Technical Sales, and he'll be covering some of the topics that we're discussing in the webinar today, and will also be part of the Q&A later on. So we start with the market overview. IoT is exploding, but we don't all see how it's impacting our day-to-day lives or understand the numbers behind it. Between 2017 and 2020, we saw a growth of $138 billion and expect this to be in the trillions by 2025. Very large numbers for a market which people see in its early days still. According to McKinsey, 127 new IoT devices connected to the internet every second in 2017. But as of today, we are now looking at an average of over 300 devices per second, more than double. Putting this another way, there were 7 billion devices in 2018, and now there are around 31 billion. The market size, growth, and opportunity speaks for itself. Why is the market flourishing, you may ask? For consumers, IoT has delivered new technological innovation that has dramatically improved energy efficiency, security, health, education, and many other aspects of daily life. For enterprises, IoT underpins solutions that improve decision-making and productivity in manufacturing, retail, agriculture, and other sectors across the world. Many of you probably experience these today, whether work or through your home life. As we understand how we can use this technology more effectively, as we see improvements in battery life, better power consumption, and cheaper devices, IoT will only become more and more relevant in today's world, and more use cases will be reachable as it will be more cost effective. I want to go into some use cases to show how IoT is making an impact, starting with the thermostat, which now forms part of the smart home, which I imagine some of you can relate to. By using sensors and algorithms that collect and analyze heating and cooling data in millions of homes across the globe, smart thermostats promise to reduce global demand for electricity. This increases power plant capacity, but also lowers carbon emissions as we use less power for heating and cooling our homes, and therefore leads to happy consumers as their bills are reduced. I know, for example, the impact of smart thermostats, as I have one at home. It knows when I'm in or out of home, to set the temperature accordingly so energy is not wasted. It does this by using the mobile location. There are other areas of the smart home, such as alarm sensors and oil tank sensors, to name but a few. Yes, these I also have at home. My alarm system works with 2 SIMs for coverage. The manufacturer does not know where the device will end up. So having more than 1 SIM or a roaming SIM gives multiple connectivity options to ensure the device works at the time of deployment in the location it has reached. The humble oil tank has not really changed that much over the last few decades for home heating, and mine dates back to the 80s. My tank is at the bottom of the garden. It has no gauge on the outside to see how much oil is left in order for me to get it topped up with the oil company. But I had installed a sensor. This sensor has a SIM, and this sensor pings the bottom of the tank once a week. This information goes to myself to let me know how much oil I've got left in my tank, but also goes to the oil company. The oil company then knows when to automatically come out and fill up my oil tank, so I don't have to worry about running out of oil. Connected cars. Most new cars come with a SIM, and in some cases multiple, depending on the use case the car manufacturer is providing to the consumer. And I'm sure many of you with new cars can understand this, how it works. These connected solutions enable manufacturers and OEMs to improve everything from telematics to preventive maintenance, accident prevention, and entertainment systems. Dealers and manufacturers can even leverage IoT platforms to facilitate remote software updates across their entire inventory, such as the new Land Rover Defender, which came out recently. So the opportunity in the connected vehicle space is enormous. Gartner estimates there are currently 250 million connected cars worldwide, with an estimated market size of $53.9 billion. It's expected to reach $166 billion by 2025. Farming and agriculture. With the changing environments through global warming, IoT is becoming more important to farming and agriculture. Environmental monitors can be deployed to help farmers track climate, soil, and plant conditions to maximize crop yields. By attaching sensors to farming equipment, manufacturers can help farmers troubleshoot technical problems in real time. Although where I live, the farmers will say that they don't need any of these bells and whistles when knowing when it is time to cut the wheat. So while technology can help, there is also a mindset to change which is needed in some instances. Healthcare. Bluetooth-enabled medical equipment, such as hospital beds and wheelchairs as an example, can help hospital managers keep track of limited hospital resources. And it's something which we see very clearly in this COVID environment that we live in. Wearables such as heart rate and blood pressure monitors can be used to observe vital signs, automatically transmitting potential life-saving data across distances and facilities in real time and in a matter of seconds. This allows patients to be at home while being monitored and not taking up space in hospitals. And finally, there is the retail space. Smart shelves can help retailers manage inventory while facilitating point-of-sale systems that allow shoppers to skip the checkout line. Bluetooth beacons can send timed and targeted notifications, such as discount vouchers, events, etc., to smartphones with a geographical coverage area. They can also be used to measure foot traffic to determine optimal staffing for different dates and times. These are but a few of the use cases that we see, but there are so many out there today. So with improvements in technology, we will see more and more sophisticated use cases for IoT. I'll now be handing over to Mahal, who will cover the next few slides.
Thank you, Chris. So one of the new use cases to emerge within the IoT space is the need for what's called eSIM and soft SIM connectivity. As the adoption of IoT grows within industry verticals and more devices get IoT enabled, such as connected and smart devices, there is a need to ensure connectivity across multiple countries and multiple networks, such that the device is not locked to one single country or network. Very simplistically speaking, this is the use case that is enabled by eSIM and SoftSIMs. Now, eSIM and SoftSIMs, they basically break the symbolic hard link between the device and the network that has previously existed with normal SIM cards. An eSIM or SoftSIM enabled device can have multiple network connectivity profiles, all simultaneously available on the device, and they are activated on an as needed basis. So when you're in country A, the SIM profile from operator A would be activated to give connectivity in that particular country. When the device goes to country B, the profile from operator A is disabled automatically, and the profile from operator B is enabled to give connectivity in the new country. This takes away the huge logistical hassle that device manufacturers and users have previously had to handle in ensuring that they have the correct cellular connectivity source for each device based on the location where that particular device is going to be deployed and used. We go to the next slide. And then traditionally, when we talk about the IoT use cases, most of them have centered around low bandwidth use cases, such as smart meters, sensors, location trackers, etc. Now, all of these devices, they take periodic reading or measurements or on-demand readings and measurements, and then ping it back into the network where that information could then be used for a certain purpose. But they were all centered around very low bandwidth use cases, and partly so because the technologies that were prevalent at the time, such as 2G and 3G networks, they were sufficient to service these low bandwidth use cases. And then subsequently, the introduction of other LPWAN technologies, such as LoRaWAN, Sigfox, and also the more standardized ones, such as Narrowband IoT and LTE-M, they were all geared or catered for low bandwidth use cases. But in the recent years, we have seen the IoT adoption grow in new industry verticals where it previously did not exist, and these require high bandwidth connections for smart devices. So some examples are medical, robotics, surveillance, media streaming for broadcasting, etc. The new age radio technologies such as 5G and Wi-Fi 6 are perfectly suited to service these use cases. Now, 5G in particular brings high bandwidth connections with ultra low latencies, enabling the use cases that were previously unheard of. Now, private 5G networks that many of you would have heard of are an example of this, where an organization, such as those in manufacturing, for example, has set up private macro networks to ensure controllable service environment for mission critical connectivity. Now, we are already starting to see purpose-built devices for many of these industry verticals that benefit from these 5G and Wi-Fi 6 connectivity. When it comes to Wi-Fi 6, it is particularly useful for non-mobile smart devices that require large bandwidth connections, such as CCTV cameras, manufacturing, robotics, etc. Because these devices tend to be non-mobile, there is little benefit in having a very expensive or comparatively expensive cellular radios on these IoT devices, because that puts the device price up. So between 5G and Wi-Fi 6, we're basically going to see a lot of new use cases materialize for IoT connectivity space. Okay, go to the next slide. And then we talk about OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. So as more and more devices become connected, we laugh about this, but the toasters and washing machines in our households are all connected nowadays. The OEMs that manufacture these devices, they have a particular challenge to ensure that when these devices are shipped, they are shipped with basic connectivity. Now, what does that actually mean? It's important to note that when the OEMs manufacture devices, they may not know at the time of manufacturing where each device will be delivered and used during the device's life cycle. So take an example of a car manufactured at BMW plant in Austria. At the time when the car is being manufactured, it is not known if the car will be shipped to the local dealership in Australia or the US or the UK to the first owner. Nonetheless, at the time of manufacturing, the car must be equipped with basic connectivity such that when the car is shipped over to a local dealership based on who the first owner is, the dealership can actually use that connectivity to connect the car to BMW Cloud and then download a profile that would then guarantee local network connectivity. So provisioning of this basic connectivity at the point of manufacturing onto the device is what we call Bootstrap Connectivity, which has become a niche area purely because the number of devices that have to be shipped with basic connectivity on them. Now, these OEMs, they often tend to work with large connectivity providers that are able to provide connectivity across multiple countries and multiple networks. So thereby ensuring that no matter where that particular device is shipped, the device would always have that basic connectivity, which can then be used to download another connectivity profile for local connectivity. And that is a huge opportunity with OEMs operating across many different industries. So I hand it over back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Mehul, for that. As more and more industries go through digital transformation, new IoT use cases are developed and more devices become available for niche IoT use cases. The need for device connectivity, device management and location intelligence becomes critically important, and this is where Pareteum can help. Experience Cloud delivers a global smart SIM service with multi-network, multi-country connectivity for IoT use cases. Based on an eSIM compliant technology with full backward compatibility to currently deployed IoT devices, Smart SIM can be deployed anywhere globally and programmed remotely to deliver most optimum connectivity experience through a policy-driven approach. Unlike consumer devices that require very high levels of bandwidth consumption, most IoT use cases require very low levels of bandwidth, typically around 10 KB per month. Also, perhaps the most important aspect of lifecycle management for battery-operated IoT devices is to save power consumption as much as possible to elongate their service life. These two factors acting together have led to development of new LPWAN technologies for cellular networks to provide long-distance connectivity with extremely low power consumption. NB-IoT and LTE-M are two LPWAN standards that have seen rapid adoption over a very short span of time. These technologies are supported by Pareteum and by a smart network. I briefly alluded to our smart SIM in the previous slide. To expand on this further, our SIMs work with 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G and LPWAN radio technologies. On the LPWAN side, that is dependent on country and region. and what is being offered there with the mobile operators. Different service profiles can be defined, each with their own list of defined countries and networks and radio technologies that are allowed to connect to. For certain use cases, static IP can be provided over private or public IP. In addition to the Smart SIM connectivity, there is the connectivity management platform, which form parts of our Experience Cloud. This delivers end-to-end connectivity lifecycle management with multi-level hierarchy necessary for resellers of IoT connectivity. Now I actually want to pass back to Mehul, who can go into more detail on our CMP platform.
Thanks, Chris. So the connectivity management platform that we offer provides the IoT connectivity management use case, and it's a bit of a mouthful. So what exactly does that mean? So the overall end-to-end process of provisioning connectivity for IoT devices and then managing this connectivity during the life cycle is all a workflow-driven approach that is provided from our CMP platform. So think of it from this point of view, that if you happen to have an IoT device or happen to have many IoT devices that require connectivity, be it cellular over 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G technologies, be it Wi-Fi, or be it one of the LPWAN technologies, such as Narrowband IoT and LTE-M, we provide a CMP solution that would let you provision the correct connectivity for each device depending on the mode of connectivity that the device supports between the ones that I mentioned previously. But not just that, layered on top of that underlying service provisioning, we can then, using a variety of different functional modules that the platform provides, which are all shown as the little boxes within the big purple block, we can manage that connectivity lifecycle. So some of the examples of what that capability brings are along the lines of having a product catalog with an associated rating engine. So when you are provisioning connectivity, for example, to a smart meter that based on the use case would only require usage of text messaging, SMS messaging for A2P purposes, as well as a little bit of data for control channels. It does not require any voice connectivity. You would define a product definition that only enables SMS and cellular data services on that particular subscription, which is assigned to a smart meter device. Another device may require use of voice and data, but no SMS. You may have yet another device that only requires data, doesn't require SMS, doesn't require voice. So based on what is the exact use case that you are providing the connectivity for, and what is the capability of the device itself that you're provisioning connectivity to, you can define different product catalog entries with associated rating definitions. So when SMSs are sent and received, or when data is consumed, how should that service usage be rated and tariffed? All of that can be done from within the platform. In the other end of the scale, if you think about an end-to-end connectivity provisioning workflow, you may have a bunch of IoT devices that you want to provision connectivity to, and then as you become more successful, you're onboarding more devices, you want an automated workflow management that allows you to order new SIM cards to provision cellular connectivity for the new IoT devices that you're rolling out, which then requires some sort of an order management capability. It requires some sort of a accounting interface and a payment interface, because the payment for those SIM cards have to be debited. It also requires some usage visualization capability, because based on how the usage is to be tariffed, you as a customer would want to know how much service has been used up, and for that, how have you been charged. In a postpaid environment, which is what most IoT use cases are, you would also want to see your monthly invoice, so you know how you've been charged for the usage that all of your IoT devices have incurred. So all of these capabilities are included in our CMP solution, and they are packaged as an end-to-end workflows. So it becomes very, very easy and simple for a service provider or an enterprise to consume IoT connectivity services. And that, in a nutshell, is what CMP solution is for. It helps you provision connectivity and then manage that connectivity throughout the life cycle of that connectivity. Hand it back to you.
Thanks, Mahul. So we've talked at length about IoT, but as we come to the end of this webinar, I did not want to forget the other services we offer to support your business needs. In addition to the points addressed around IoT, we also have in-flight connectivity through Wi-Fi on our many partners, messaging on our own in-house built platform, through to contact center solutions, to name but a few. If you have any questions around these, please don't hesitate to contact us directly, or to use the chat option to ask for further information during the Q&A. So that's the Pareteum Cloud, a unified cloud communications platform capable of empowering limitless IoT solutions with global cellular and Wi-Fi connectivity at your finger points. We will now move on to the Q&A section through the chat. Mahul and I will endeavour to answer all your questions, and if we run out of time or don't get round to those questions, then we'll follow up directly with you. Thank you. Alex, back to you.
Yep, so we have two questions, one from Carl Boderman and one from Josh Broach, but they kind of overlap, so I'll stick with one of them. So the question is, how does Pareteum differentiate itself from large telecoms with IoT offerings like Vodafone? And what size customers are most attracted to Pareteum's IoT offering?
I think both Mahul and I will probably answer this, but to start, I mean, I think what the strength of Pareteum is its platform. So going back to what Mahul was talking about on the CMP side, what we're able to offer, our flexibility, our ability to offer local connectivity around the world is a differentiator for ourselves. When compared back to large mobile operators who can only rely on their roaming, or where they have their own local footprints, they aren't able to get local footprint from other operators, because that's just giving away competitive advantage. So that's one of the strengths that I see from Pareteum's side. Mahul?
You're absolutely right, Chris. And just to add to that, the capability that the platform brings and how easy and seamless it is to manage the connectivity provisioning and the management of connectivity itself throughout the life cycle, there is a big difference between how you would do that with a large operator such as Vodafone, for example, versus us. As you would expect, the platform is much more nimble, much more agile, and much more feature-rich.
Cool. We have another question from Thomas Verity, who asks, are integrated financial clearing and settlement services included in the solution?
Oh, you're able to answer that one.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I picked the question, but if the question is alluding to kind of down the payment and collection route, then typically we showed it as an interface into an existing external platform on the CMP slide that we were showing previously. But the platform itself has open interfaces that can be used to integrate into external payment service gateways and other service providers such as ACH, etc. So between the workflow capabilities that are present on CMP itself and via integration, the capabilities that are sourced externally from payment gateways and ACHs, the said capability would then be handled.
Cool. So we don't have any new questions right now, but we can wait a couple minutes here and just to make sure people can ask the questions that they want to ask. So we have a question from Rob Christie who asks, are there any comparisons to Twilio and what differentiates Pareteum?
I think we kind of like answered that question with the first one, first question that was asked in terms of our differentiators from our platform, our flexibility, our local connectivity, our smart SIM, etc. From that perspective. I think when it comes to comparison to Twilio, we are competing in a global market. There are different verticals and there are different use cases, and we do come across them sometimes and sometimes we don't. Mehul, do you want any input on that?
The only thing I would add is that it also depends on what is the exact use case on a case-by-case basis. There are a variety of different connectivity-related use cases that we fulfill, and so does Twilio. So whether you are speaking particularly of, let's say, a messaging use case, or you're talking about an IoT connectivity use case, or you're talking about PSS, OSS use case, then that conversation would tend to vary slightly. So it is one that requires further discussion with the knowledge of what use case is being considered for that comparison.
So we have another question from AK Hall who asks, can you speak a little more about the type devices? Mentioned something about LP1.
LP1, did you say?
Mm-hmm. I think it was LP1. So NB IoT and IoT Mehul.
Oh, okay. Well, we are device agnostic. So we provision connectivity as long as you have a device that is standard compliant and uses one of the connectivity methods that we spoke about earlier. We're not precious about what device it is. We do not have a certification process. We do not believe in that. We believe in providing standard compliant solutions. So yeah, any device that uses 3G, 4G radios, uses LPWAN, uses LTE-M, uses Narrowband IoT, provided that we are providing that radio connectivity, it should work just fine.
Cool. We have another question from Josh Broach who asks, has the Smart SIM allowed Pareteum to make inroads with IoT customers that were previously out of reach? Or is the Smart SIM just a repackaging of existing IP? Are there other Smart SIMs on the market?
Are you taking that one, Chris, or you want me to comment on that?
Sorry, I was on mute. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it certainly has, to answer it. And it's not so much the underlying connectivity that SmartSIM provides, but the way the product has been packaged for IoT use cases. It certainly has allowed us inroads into new use cases that we previously were struggling to address, particularly as SmartSIM integrates the eSIM connectivity, or rather the eSIM provisioning capability into it. It is also multi-country and multi-network. One of the points that often gets overlooked is when you deal with a large multi-country operator such as Vodafone, for example, they typically provide connectivity in a lot of different regions via the roaming agreements that they have with respective local operators. One of the big differentiators for SmartSIM is the ability to have local connectivity with different operators. Makes it cheaper, makes it that much feature rich. So it is that aspect of the SmartSIM product that we've launched that has certainly helped us win some use cases that we previously would have struggled. Anything you want to add, Chris?
I think you covered it there, Mehul. I think that's a big differentiator for us with the SmartSIM compared to, as you say, from a Vodafone perspective, which is enabling us to attract certain and win certain use cases that we wouldn't have done before.
So Gagun Gahir says, thanks for covering so many aspects of IoT. What do you see as the use cases over the next 12 to 24 months? And are there any silver linings from learnings we've taken from the COVID new ways of working?
Sorry, Alex, can you repeat that? It broke up the first bit.
Okay. Yeah, so Gagun Gahir says, thanks for covering so many aspects of IoT. What do you see as the use cases over the next 12 to 24 months? And are there any silver linings from learnings we've taken from COVID, new ways of working?
Thanks, Alex. So, I mean, in terms of silver linings, I mean, I think when I was going through some of the use cases earlier on, when you look at the medical side, you know, we see that the benefits of IoT in terms of helping manage how hospitals are run, allowing patients to be at home because they can be monitored at home and monitored on a real-time basis, which is, because of COVID, is important that people who aren't seriously ill can still be treated, but they're not treated in hospitals, they're treated at home. So I think, you know, that's been really important. I think when it comes to, you know, not being in the office and working at home, I think IoT is playing a big impact in that, in terms of facilitating communication, facilitating home working. Wi-Fi, we've seen on our terrestrial networks a huge increase in traffic, which is part of, you know, one of the connectivity methods of IoT. So, I mean, Mehul, over to you for your input.
Yeah, I mean, you've covered most of it. But yeah, I mean, it's more of the same, to be honest, in terms of there are many use cases that we've identified previously, and we're just going to do a better job of addressing those. But also, what this situation with COVID has kind of shown is how important connectivity is, really. We somehow take it for granted. But when something like this happens, everybody's remote working, home working, you realize how important cellular and Wi-Fi connectivity is.
So we have a question from Michael Ciccarone, who asks, what is the average time between contract execution and go live of services, i.e. joining the Experience Cloud?
And that's you, Mehul.
Yeah, so not trying to dodge the question, but again, depends on what is the use case that you're looking for. So messaging, for example, could be a matter of weeks. You could be up and running from the time of signing a contract. If you were wanting to provide IoT connectivity, which is the main purpose and focus of this particular call, again, it could be very, very quick from the time you sign the contract to when we can have you up and running. But because we also mentioned some other use cases during this call, which are also covered through Experience Cloud, such as MVNO, MVNE platform solutions, they take a little bit longer because there's a lot more integration required with the underlying kind of radio networks, etc. So I would say, depending on what use case you're looking at, it could vary from a few weeks to a few months.
We have another question from Josh Broach, who says, thanks for answering my questions. I know you mentioned connected cars as a use case. Are self-driving vehicles in particular on Pareteum's roadmap?
We haven't particularly thought about that, but to be honest, whether the car is a self-driving car or it is driven by a person, really from provisioning of connectivity point of view, it is exactly the same for us. So I would say that the products that we currently sell addresses both autonomous cars as well as the cars driven by a person.
We have a question from Josh Hechanova, who asks, hi, I would like to know more about startup vehicle telematics service provider planning to scale in the next 24 months. They need connectivity for various devices, interested particularly in eSIMs and MVNO.
I mean, I think for that one, that's more of a, Josh will take your details and organize an offline conversation to discuss this in more detail. So, because I think that's quite, there's a lot there to go through,
Sure.
But definitely something that we can support.
All right, thanks guys. I think that's all the time we have for today. So if we missed your questions, don't worry. We've saved them and we will have a team member follow up directly. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to us via our website, LinkedIn, or if you have a personal Pareteum contact. We've recorded today's session, so if you'd like to review it or send it to a colleague, be on the lookout for an email with a link. You'll also be able to find the recording on our blog, along with a recap of the presentation. So with that, I would like to thank you guys once again and wish you all an excellent Wednesday.